Jamaica's public health system is broken. Every week we hear the horror stories. Long waiting times, no beds, basic equipment not working. Hospitals and clinics are in crisis. While this government cuts ribbons, Jamaicans are being left to suffer in overcrowded, under-resourced facilities like this one. The next PNP government will change this. We're going to shift focus. We want to prioritize actual care for people when they're sick, not these mega projects with huge cost overruns and that can't finish years after they start. Refurbishing every operating theatre, creating urgent care centres island-wide so people stop waiting days for help on benches or floors. We're going to launch national screening programs to target the biggest killers of our people: cancer, hypertension, which is pressure, diabetes, which is sugar. We want to catch them early so that people's lives can be saved. We will make the investments to ensure that every parish hospital has the equipment it needs to deliver the services required by the people. And stop the outsourcing racket that leaves patients with nothing but bills and delays. And we will support our healthcare workers, not just with words, but with housing, with training opportunities, and with respect. This is not about PR, it's about saving actual people's lives. Next PNP government will deliver proper, decent healthcare for the people of Jamaica. Time come.
I'm just getting some updates on my phone, and Flow has indicated that Savlamar has been restored. Digicel is also indicating successes, so communication is coming back slowly but surely. The gasoline retailers are telling me that they are finally able to get the tankers in to the areas for fuel for the gas stations. So there are improvements, slow but sure. And as I said before, I think this week is going to be a good breaking week in terms of really breaking the back in terms of getting to all of these communities that are marooned and all of these people that are stuck and suffering and waiting patiently on assistance. So I ask again, I make a national appeal. I know the frustration, I know the anger, I know the anxiety, but to do anything that will disrupt these operations will only delay the assistance that you so badly need. So I just ask you, remain calm, and you're seeing
potential health dangers if we do not get the medics into ground zero now. ISAT Buchanan will tell you what they experienced on the eastern end of the island with Hurricane Melissa in Portland. We have MP Natalie Nita. She is going to tell you what happens when we do not coordinate well. When the local players at the councillor, local government level, the MPs, and outside help tries to come in, but the coordinating hub cannot hold, she is going to tell you how we propose that we do it differently so that Jamaica can get on with the business of recovery. I will speak with you as a member of parliament for South St. James, a constituency that was directly in the crossbows of miserable Melissa. And then Zuleika Jess will tell you of the experience she had with her constituents in St. Elizabeth. I will also speak to you about what's happening in Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, because the information that we're receiving from our representatives is too much not to share with Jamaica. We will speak again when you can ask us questions at the end of the presentation. But for now, please welcome Mark Golding, the leader of the opposition.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Jamaica. Good afternoon, members of the media and all listeners. I want to begin by expressing my profound, heartfelt condolences to the families and friends of those who have lost their lives in this tragic hurricane or its aftermath. Our sympathies also extend very profoundly to those thousands, tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands, of Jamaicans who are suffering at this time from the impact, the calamitous impact that this hurricane has had. And we are aware, of course, that there are levels of destruction. There's a large ground zero, as it's called, which is really the areas of Jamaica that were in the swathe of the hurricane when the eye hit in eastern Westmoreland, stretching into St. Elizabeth, stretching into the more westerly parts of Westmoreland as well, and then moving north into South St. James, parts of Hanover, and of course Trelawney and even St. Anne. The rest of Jamaica has also suffered damage, some of it before the hit of the hurricane. And so we can't leave them out, because there are communities all over the island where people are in a very difficult situation, whether it be due to no access with roads being blocked or breakaways, landslides, and so on. Our hearts go out to all who are in this dire predicament now. Now, I would say that this hurricane and its aftermath represent an existential threat to our society as we know it. People in life-threatening situations of isolation and deprivation mean that unless relief can reach them promptly, and unless the necessary assistance can be found and distributed in an equitable and transparent manner to help them rebuild their lives, Jamaica is going to be facing very difficult times. And I think that point is not lost on anyone who is familiar with what is going on as I speak. In this context, we all need to pull together in unity to get Jamaica through this terrible disaster. This is a time to join hands and hearts, not just in words, but in deeds, so that the whole nation can feel part of responding positively to this devastating situation and the solutions that will help us to pull ourselves out of it. The opposition must not at this time be seeking to score political points as a political competitor of the government. This is not the time for the opposition to adopt that posture. And we are indeed trying our very best to operate in the spirit of that. On the other hand, we must point out where there are areas of need and what we see as the priorities in relation to those needs, where we see weaknesses in the response mechanisms that need strengthening or correcting, and we must provide, where we can, constructive, well-intentioned suggestions to help navigate the country through this disaster. We must also demand transparency and fairness in the distribution of all relief. The relief must get to those who need it, prioritizing those who need it most, whether they be of whatever political color or whatever demographic group they may belong to. They are all Jamaicans, and they are to be treated equally in this time without any form of discrimination or tribal politics coming into it. And we want to stand for that. There can be no place for partisanship or profiteering by political insiders or others connected to them at a time like this. It requires good governance, inclusive governance, authentic communication, and everyone working together. I now move to some of the things that I wish to propose in this regard. I have proposed to the Prime Minister from last week, Wednesday, that he should establish a broad-based task force to be given the responsibility of governance oversight over the relief effort, the relief coming in, how it is dealt with, how it is distributed, not to manage that process on a day-to-day basis, but to provide oversight to those who are managing it. So there's some accountability for how it's done, and that accountability is being held by a broad-based group that can enjoy the support and confidence of the whole society, especially those who are suffering terribly now and no doubt fear that they may not be treated fairly or they may be ignored or overlooked in the response of the state to the crisis. I also think there needs to be a clear command structure for the actual day-to-day management of the response to the relief. And that should be led, in my opinion, by professionals in disaster management, not by politicians who do not know the ins and outs of responding to a disaster of this magnitude. And we should not be shy of seeking international support and help from persons who have career expertise and experience in this regard. Thirdly, we're going to need a Marshall Plan, a well-funded, broad-based plan for the rebuilding and reconstruction of large swathes of Jamaica which have been ravaged by this hurricane. That plan cannot be developed today, but it is vital that we prepare such a plan and that it have the inputs of persons who have the necessary skills and experience and knowledge to design a comprehensive, workable plan that can be executed efficiently and that can have the confidence of our international partners we are going to rely on heavily to provide the financial support for this. And in terms of more specific recommendations now, I have asked the Prime Minister to make an additional allocation of resources to members of Parliament so that they can mobilize communities and contractors to help with the cleaning up of communities that are currently in a state of devastation, clearing roads where necessary, cutting trees and the like. Until that allocation is made, members of Parliament are unable to respond to the needs of the people unless they happen to have some personal resources or access to dealing with it outside of the public system, and many do not have that. I would also say that the process of engaging contractors to do that kind of work should be simplified and made easy for members of Parliament, especially in those areas where there's very limited connectivity and where following the normal bureaucratic processes that are required would be very challenging or impossible for members of Parliament. If contractors have a TRN, whatever the allocation is, they should be invoices, and those invoices can be submitted, but the work should be able to begin. Secondly, we note and agree with the decision to suspend the imposition of import duties and import GCT on disaster relief items coming into Jamaica. However, we believe that the period for which this has been announced is too short, because the time it takes to mobilize funding and make the necessary procurement abroad, the logistics, etc., of getting it shipped to points on land where they can then be shipped or flown to Jamaica takes some time. And to have it cut off by the end of this month is too short. And it's also not clear from the announcement that was made whether goods in transit to Jamaica will get the benefit, even if they haven't landed here at the time of the expiry of the window. I'm suggesting that we recast that window in a way which is more realistic, given the situation that we face. I also think we need an evacuation plan urgently for persons who are without shelter. That needs to be well thought through so that persons can be moved to places of safety where whatever form of accommodation can be erected to support them, whether it be tents or something else that can be put in place and they can have access to the basic means of survival in an organized way. And that is necessary because right now we have people, many Jamaicans who are exposed to the elements, including babies, including children, including the elderly, including persons with disabilities, and they need to be moved to accommodation which protects them from the ravages of the elements going forward. Those are my thoughts, and I'm now going to hand over to the next MP who is going to address more specific concerns in their particular constituency. I thank you.
Thank you, Party Leader. Greetings all. I'm Isa Buchanan, MP for Portland Eastern, also the spokesperson for Youth and Human Rights. I speak on behalf of the people on the eastern side of Jamaica. I'm setting the context to say that equity in distribution is going to be an important theme if we are to ensure that all persons in Jamaica are not excluded or left out, but rather inclusion. Now in Portland, this is a direct message from the constituents. Port Antonio is not all of Portland. So in saying that, I want people to understand that there was devastation in Portland Eastern. In particular, the Fellowship Division, which is a valley area, Melissa did serious damage in that area. There are persons who, the roofs are all gone. It's similar in the Mansion Hill Division. So there are persons who are homeless as we speak. I raise this in the context that persons have an ability to try to survive. They try their best to ensure that they move on with their life. It's almost an innate ability these days. But I want the government to understand that when persons are building back their houses and just taking up zincs that probably don't even belong to them to ensure that they have a roof over their heads, they can't wait. It's impossible to wait until somebody comes to say, okay, I see the damage. We will process your claim and then give you some support. That support is in the sum of $50,000, $100,000, $400,000 if it's complete destruction. And if you are a Jamaican and you want to be a homeowner, you know the reality that $400,000 will never be able to put you back in the position that would make you a homeowner or in livable, humane conditions. So when I speak of equity of distribution, although Melissa didn't hit at ground zero in the east, we are an island surrounded by water, especially if you're a coastline parish like Portland, Eastern, St. Thomas, Portland, Eastern and Western, all of Portland and all of St. Thomas. But if we speak of the constituency, I'm not going to sit here or stand here and say that MPs who are not in those ground zeros aren't affected, because we all are. As it is right now, we are a country where resources are scarce. The opposition leader would have reached out to the Prime Minister and there was an allocation. What does that allocation look like? I can only tell you from the lived experience that from a human rights perspective, if you get $1.5 million, that amounts to no more than 600 care packages and probably 22 tarpaulins. Why am I speaking on this? Because it would mean that if you are a member of parliament and you had persons voting for you in the amount of 8,000 plus persons, these are persons that have been affected, and whether you know it or not, it's not just the elderly, it's not just women and children. They're able-bodied persons who live day to day. And I'm just using that as a starting point because I'm saying this, it is not the time to be political. You can't see color, you can't see political parties. You have to understand that on a human rights plane, the needs of everybody will be important. And we might not know it now, but what Friday will look like in terms of how you source your meal, it won't be a laughable situation. We must look at what is happening across Jamaica. And while we start to think of how resources are distributed, I will yield to my senior, Natalie, Comrade Natalie, to speak about distribution and all of that. But what I will say, though, is what is of great importance is that we are to go to the bare minimum and think of the human rights realities. There are persons who are ill, who their medication has to be on the refrigerator. They need energy and they don't have it. So 7 days have passed thereabout, and that medical access is not a reality, because I've heard Portland is not a priority. I've heard that, and that is a sad reality, because I have the evidence in terms of looking at the photos, the pictures, being on the ground in Manchester, being on the ground in Reach, being in Fellowship. I'm just naming a few: Bellevue, Comfort Castle, Millbank, where there are just total devastation, disaster. Persons who are from the disabilities community, the disabled community, and they don't have a home. The shelters aren't in operation. It's not a continuation of it. Persons have to go far places. So I need people to understand that. And when it comes to the distribution, yes, ODPEM is there. The Ministry of Labor and Social Security and care packages are going out. But I want you to quantify the reality. Is that if you have 300 care packages, that can just go to even one community. And it will, while I stand as a member of Parliament of Portland Eastern, and I can do so much and no more with the resources. And I understand when it comes to the concept of support Jamaica and funneling all resources through the government. That is an impossibility and not realistic. So much so that I have gone on by taking guidance from the diaspora to start a GoFundMe. And it is the diaspora from Portland and persons who are concerned that have raised funds for me to be able to do things that the government is not yet prepared to do. I will just say, think of every single person, because